Welcome, everyone, to Campus with a Conscience speaker series.
That embraces everything students will experience during their time at Sunway University. It's the fundamental spirit at the heart of Sunway campus life, educating, encouraging, and engaging students in all aspects of a diverse and inclusive community to support them in adopting a lifestyle and lifestyle habits that truly reflect a society determined to create a more sustainable environment for this generation and generations to come. Campus with a Conscience is just one of the reasons why I am personally delighted and honored that the Jeffrey Sachs Center on Sustainable Development is based here at Sunway University, Malaysia.
Welcome again, everyone. So, today's Campus with a Conscience speaker series, which is a seminar focused on presentations on sustainability, hosted by Sunway University. So, I'm Maslisa Zainuddin, and as usual, I'll be your moderator this afternoon. I'm a senior lecturer with the School of Arts and right here at Sunway University. And in the audience today, we have distinguished guests from Sunway University and beyond, and I welcome you one and all. So, as many of you are aware, Sunway University is home to the Jeffrey Sachs Centre for Sustainable Development, the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health, and we are also the Sustainable Development Solutions Network home for Asia, alongside Paris and New York, making us the perfect host for this platform and merit its reputation for nurturing a holistic education and promoting a planetary health mindset within our future nation builders. So, this platform of ours sets out to make a difference in the world, and we are delighted to welcome you to join us on this journey to be part of the generation that decided to make a difference. So today we are very excited to welcome our guest speaker, Matthew Carvalho, a visiting researcher and Fulbright scholar at the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health right here at Sunway University. So specializing in global governance and diplomacy, Matthew has worked multiple jobs in the global health field, including work for the O'Neill Institution for National and Global Health Law at Georgetown University Law Center. And Matthew is currently a research assistant for the O'Neill Institute as well. Along with, he's also, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering today. It never happens. As well as the inaugural policy fellow for the Planetary Health Alliance, based at the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University. He has a lot of credentials lined up. So, also, something that Matthew is passionate about is that he serves as a co-founder for the Global Health Governance as Public Service Program, which aims to train students on global health and diplomacy. And he leads the team to the World Health Assembly in Geneva, Switzerland, each year. So Matthew is here with us today to talk about a topic he is actually very passionate about: learning to lead in a complex world. We as stewards of the future. So please join me in welcoming today's guest speaker, Matthew Carvalho. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Hear me? Okay, cool. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Lisa, for that lovely, lovely introduction. I just want to give a quick shout out to Sunway University and the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health in particular for sponsoring me here these last 6 months. I only have about 3 weeks left, and it feels very, very bittersweet to be heading back soon. If you haven't gotten the chance to go to the Graduate Center and check out the Center for Planetary Health, I really, really encourage you to. There's a group of incredible people working over there doing incredible work. So I really, really thank them in particular for being here as well. I also want to thank Monash University Malaysia and University Malaya, who have co-sponsored me in being here, as well as the Malaysian American Commission on Malaysian American Commission on Educational Exchange, which hosts my Fulbright scholarship here. As it's study week for students and there are exams coming up, that actually is something I wanted to focus my conversation today around, and wanted to talk a bit about my academic career, what led me to here, and a few perspectives that I had on what it's like to be a student in the 21st century and how we need to engage as we move forward. There have been incredible speakers as a part of this program. There's just an AI specialist that was here for the last conversation who I have deep respect for. I'm 23 years old. I live at Sunway Waterfront House just down the road. So I am definitely not as well equipped, but I'm looking forward to kind of having a conversation about students and education and where the next generation goes from here. So to start out, this is me. From high school, actually. It's about 10 plus years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I was a very different person back then. When I was first in middle school, I had the opportunity to apply to go to a private high school. And I never thought it was going to happen, but one day I was at middle school, my mom drove to campus, saw that there was a letter in the mail and that I had got accepted with a scholarship to be able to attend. It was a very defining moment for me in a lot of ways, because coming from a town of 1,000 people, kind of two parents as high school teachers, it's not something I really expected to happen. But as a result, I saw myself having a duty to succeed academically and to make sure that I could do everything in my power to make sure I was fulfilling the responsibility that I had been given and doing everything that I could to move a cause forward. As a result, this was probably the most important number that I dedicated my life to for 4 years. For those of you who might not know this, this is the highest possible GPA that you can get within an honors program if you weight it at some of the private high schools in the US. It was so important for me that I dedicated everything that I could over my 4 years at high school to achieve a 4.833. It would be nights of no sleep. It would be nights of, working, studying 11, 12 plus hours a day. Weekends were slim, and we had a study hall from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Monday through Friday that was mandatory for us to attend. So my life throughout high school was very devoted to my academics. As a result, I took as many honors courses as I could. I took as many advancement placement exams as I could. And I was so obsessed with doing everything that I could to even get 1/100th of a point or 1/10th of a point or anything that I could, because I thought that I needed to be there and I needed to be perfect in order to succeed academically and move forward. And as a result, it defined a lot of my high school experience. I didn't do as many clubs or extracurriculars. I was very focused solely on as many academic courses that I could possibly take within a semester and doing the best that I possibly could on all of my exams. And then I ended up getting into a university in Washington, D.C. I was very excited for. I felt as if I had succeeded, but then I stopped for a moment and went back to myself and said, do I want to follow that same track record during my time at uni? How do I want to go about this? And what did I do in high school that may not be the best way to reflect back to my time as I go through university? And this is the number that I came back to, because I didn't end with a 4.833 GPA. I didn't end near a 4.833 GPA and still managed to succeed as a result. So how was I going to, change that? How was I going to maybe, try to take a bit more of a healthier standpoint to my university time to make sure that I could succeed in the best way for me. And to do that, I actually chose not to look at my transcript for the first semester of university. I decided I would, go check my grades on assignments, stuff like that, but I wouldn't actually look at the definitive number that I got at the end of each semester. And it changed my entire outlook on my education from the first day that I got to my university all the way through 5 years later now with my Master's of Science that I got last May. And I really wanted to center the conversation that I have with you around this, because I think it's really important that we start to change the tune of how we look at education, and particularly how the younger generation engages in education moving forward. I would think to myself, why am I not looking at my transcript? Is it out of fear? Is it because I'm confident I don't need it? Is it an uncertainty? And I stuck to it and realized that it actually may have been further insecurity that I wouldn't succeed. And that, by pretending as if this didn't exist, I could maybe just live in blissful ignorance and go from there. I've changed my tune since then. This is my undergraduate transcript, and I put it up here solely as a testament to the change in my perspective, that I no longer feel insecure in being defined by my GPA, my grades, or a number, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you how my mentality has changed as a result of that. So by choosing to, push hard in my academics, work as hard as I could and move forward, but also seeing the larger opportunity that I had at university, it really allowed me to build a lot more of components of myself that I didn't expect. My knowledge often came from outside the classroom. I was learning from a lot of different people throughout the United States capital of all places. And if I had just stayed in a classroom the whole time, I wouldn't have had that same level of opportunity. It helped me allow others to see the same as well. When I saw all of these opportunities that I was able to get as a result of joining my academic vigor and my academic experience with the broader landscape outside, I wanted to make sure that those opportunities weren't just for me. So I would mentor other students. I brought in other students, and we actually designed and built a program to figure out how to best engage in the greater landscape, the political landscape and governance landscape in particular, while still being committed to our academic institution and moving that forward. That actually came as a result of what Lisa shared, the Global Health Governance as Public Service program that I co-founded at Georgetown. And it helped us build and design programs where students can learn in the real world as how to lead and apply their education, and apply their courses, and apply their knowledge that they were gaining in the classroom to the greater, broader perspectives of what we were dealing with in the 21st century. It allowed me to further my own leadership skills and my own teaching abilities in some ways. And I feel really, really fortunate to have been able to now bring this to Malaysia and expand this as a result. And that actually came to the conclusion of my Bachelor's of Science degree at Georgetown, where I didn't actually attend my commencement. I had an outside opportunity to bring this program to Geneva, and decided ultimately that between a celebration of my academics with my classroom community and the larger opportunity of being part of the greater governance sphere, that I had to take this chance. I had to do what I could, not just for myself, but the students that I was bringing with me. And in the long run, it actually ended up, my commencement was with the Minister of Health of the US, of all people. So it just gave me another example of showing that moving beyond and applying what I was learning in the classroom to the greater scheme of my life was allowing me to reap a lot of the benefits and opportunities that I was hoping for. And that brought me here, actually. During my master's program, it was a joint bachelor-master's program with Georgetown, where the last semester is a study abroad. So I've had the honor and privilege of being a Fulbright scholar here with the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health, taking a lot of these thoughts and a lot of these different experiences and exposures that I had in Washington and bringing them here to Malaysia, and learning from the incredible team that I've been with on how to continue to see my own perspectives outside of the single realm that I had sometimes been focused on or determined to succeed as a result of a number on a page. I feel like my time here has deeply changed my perspectives on many things that I learned also in Washington, D.C. And I really look forward to bringing those back with me to see how we can continue to move forward educational practices in the 21st century. So in my opinion, we now live in a world where it is required of the future generation not just to be in the classroom, but to deal with the problems outside of the classroom at the same time. And a lot of institutions, Sunway University included, have been doing incredible work to deal with that paradox. How do we, as the next generation, ensure that we take up that mantle and move it forward? So this is the motto. This has kind of been my champion call over the last few years. That is the job of the youth to call leaders back to the mission and to ensure that we continue pushing and that we continue moving forward to ensure that what we want to see of the next century is something that we can bring into reality. After being here at Sunway, I think I would actually change that a little bit. I would say it's the job of this generation of youth to serve as stewards of the mission. It is not just the job of the next generation to tell leaders, this is what we need to do, this is how we need to do it, but we have to ensure that we're doing the work ourselves in this moment to build the future that we want to see and to preserve the future that we're hoping to see one day. We don't really have the luxury of committing solely to an educational space, but have to learn how to greater apply the academic skills that we learn in real time. We see this with climate change, we see it with the COVID-19 pandemic, we see it with geopolitical uncertainties, and we have to ensure that the skills that we are so privileged to have within a classroom, we can then amplify out to the greater community around us. So we've actually seen this happen a little bit already. It's a particularly interesting gambit. We're, like I said, directly facing these issues in real time and being exposed to them and have to figure out how to deal with them. And a lot of Gen Z in particular is changing their thinking as a result. While this study in particular was meant in terms of the workforce, I think it's critical to education as well. It breaks down 8 different ways that we've seen a shift in certain educational mentalities among the next generation to figure out how we can move forward a lot of these changes that we're hoping to see. The first way that it talks about is we actually expect change. A lot of Gen Z, whether it be through protests, whether it be through outside activism, are making these calls for action and then trying to fulfill political will as a result of that. We've seen it with a lot of the climate protests in particular and trying to move forward climate activism to bring about change from the greater grassroots level. There's also a certain level of pragmatism, I think, among Gen Z. There have been a lot of conversations in particular back in the US that a lot of my generation are choosing not to have children as a result of climate change and unsure of what our future will look like. So we're trying to figure out what to do and how we're going to deal with these and ensure that we're making the best possible choices based on the reality that we face. There's also a very, very strong desire to make a difference. I talked a little bit about activism, but I also think there's a lot of innovation on that front to figure out, you know, where there's a will, there's a way, and how do we ensure that if we can't go up, we go sideways and find out different ways to innovate and move forward the different goals that we're trying to achieve. There's also a strong value of collaboration and teamwork. I think this has actually been a benefit of social media in some ways. We are one of the most interconnected generations, I think, of our time. And as a result, it's built a lot of opportunities for whether it be grassroots campaigns, whether it be for political action. And I think it's an asset to both the Gen Z workforce, but also the Gen Z educational reform and structure that we're starting to see. There's a want for consensus-guided leaders and also a strong focus on mental health as well. How do we deal with the work-life balance and how do we ensure that we aren't getting burned out, and whether it be from the academic side, whether it be from the professional side, and ensure that we can do as much work as we possibly can and continue doing that as we attempt to preserve the future generation. There's different thoughts about loyalty, particularly from a corporate side, looking at, you know, if you looked a few decades ago, certain corporations would keep on their workers and staff, and there would be a certain level of, oh, I'm going to work with this corporation and this organization for my life. And we don't see that reality as much anymore, particularly in the United States. So I think Gen Z in a lot of ways is trying to figure out how to preserve our own professional safety and well-being as a result. And it's an important skill that I think is being taught in the educational sector as well. And then finally, trust and authenticity. In a world of misinformation and disinformation, I think we are really trying to figure out how to cope with that and how to move that forward. And I think we see education as one of the strongest forces to fight against that misinformation and disinformation and ensure trust and authenticity overall as we continue to move forward. So these are just a few ways that the workforce of the next generation is rethinking how we engage, but it's absolutely pivotal to how we go about education. I think in a lot of ways, Sunway University is a champion of this, finding different ways to build out values-based learning, to build out teamwork and collaboration, to ensure that students feel hopeful, not just when they go into the classroom, but when they leave the classroom. It's been truly, I've felt honored to be here and to also just witness the graduation ceremonies that just happened and how inspired so many of the students feel as they leave this campus. And I think it's really a clarion call to a lot of students across the world, myself included, on how we can be youth who lead other youth and how we can be students who lead other students and continue to move forward all of these different goals and all of these different issues we hope to champion as we not just become the leaders of tomorrow, but the leaders of today. So some people would label the 21st century as an education crisis. I'm not sure if I'd go as far as crisis, but I think we're seeing reform of the educational institutions from a youth generation perspective that we haven't seen before. I think we saw in the COVID-19 pandemic many things that have happened to the educational infrastructure as a result, whether that be transitioning to virtual learning components and how that's affected particularly primary school education, all the way to university and how, social interactions have changed and adapted as a result of being in isolation for longer periods of time and figuring out how to cope with that overall. And this quote actually comes from the Vice President of Human Development at the World Bank, saying that it's never too late for young people to have opportunities to learn. Our youth deserve to be equipped with the skills they need to thrive in an increasingly demanding and uncertain job world. Given that today's students will be tomorrow's citizens and leaders, a good and relevant education is essential to turn aspirations into reality. And I think one of the most important parts of that is relevant and the relevancy of the education that we have. I think in many ways, students are trying to figure out how to apply their academics in a way that is relevant to the world that we have right now and the issues that we face. And that's a really important part of the adaptation that we're dealing with in the 21st century. I know myself as a student, the question that I would constantly ask myself is, how can I take, this lecture, whatever I learned in the classroom, or this exam that I just did, whether I passed it or failed it, and learn from it in the real world and apply it in the real world in a way where it can help me build my own leadership capabilities, whether it be from a positive or negative experience to ultimately bring about a positive outcome. So I think we have to ensure that youth are at the forefront of this and that students are at the forefront of this. And I think when we talk about education crisis, it's more of a call to action for students to figure out how to best use the educational systems that exist to their benefit. And I think there's a lot of campaigns right now where it's students leading other students and saying, oh, I've learned from this in this way. This is how I want to go out and make an impact. Do you want to join me? There's been a lot of collective action, a lot of collaboration that has been so important to seeing how we transform the educational system that exists right now. And I've felt really inspired by seeing a lot of the student organizations and student campaigns that have happened in Malaysia, in the United States, and abroad. So on that note, I kind of want to ask a question of you all. In the wake of the world that we live in, what does learning look like? What should it look like? In what ways should we adapt to it, given the different things that we face? And I think that's very translational. So to start off, in the wake of climate change, what does learning look like and everything we face now? In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, what does learning look like in the ways that we face the problems that we have now? And then I would flip that on its head, which I think is part of the youth conversation now. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, what does leading look like? How do we lead in the face of the crises and issues that we currently have? In the wake of geopolitical uncertainty, what does leading look like? I think it's important that we ask these two questions hand in hand, because as we've seen on the international stage, some of the institutions and laws that we have right now aren't designed to deal with the abstract crises we're facing. And in regards to planetary health in particular, I think that's one of the prime examples. A lot of the institutions that we have that were designed decades ago aren't equipped to face the challenges that we have now and bring about the hopeful future that we're striving for. And I think this is why this is so tethered to education, and why learning and leading go hand in hand. One can't lead if they don't have the opportunity to learn how to do it in the first place. And that's why I'm so thankful for the fact that I have had the academic experience to be able to transition from a place where I was so insistent on just learning what was on paper to what was learned in the real world. And I really see this as a call to action to see where we go from here. Which brings me back to this, actually. In my opinion, this number is the most critical clarion call for me. In a world where we're figuring out how to learn, where we're figuring out how to lead, where the next generation is figuring out what to do to ensure that we can leave this planet in a better place than when we inherited it, where do we start? And I think we start from taking the institutions that exist and immersing ourselves in them to become the change we hope to see. I think that can start with figuring out what your grade point average actually means to you. When you're studying for an exam, when you're studying and preparing to graduate, what has the work you've invested mean? What does that mean to you, and what does that mean to your future? How do you ensure that the work that you do, whether it be within Sunway University, whether it be within Georgetown University, does something to move forward, not just your own goals, but a common and collective goal for the betterment of humanity? I really want to have a call to action to educators as well. I think it's really important that in the 21st century, we have a safe space to ask questions and to push back within a classroom. I think it helps to build the youth leaders that we hope to see. I think making sure that there are relevant applications and opportunities to use knowledge is also pivotal, so that students have a way to test out their own knowledge and feel comfortable building their own skills to be able to inherit the world after they graduate. I also think empowering students is so critical to push in their academics, their personal lives and professional lives to be the change that they truly want to see in the world. And for students, some in the room, whoever is out there during study week this week, I really want students in our generation to think hard about why education and academics matter to you, why you're here in the first place, why you're doing all of this work, why you are sleeping 2 hours a night or falling asleep during the day at your laptop. Why does this effort mean something to you? And how do you plan on using that to better yourself and to better the world? I implore you to really work as hard as you can as well. We live in a world where that is really required of us. But also ensuring that public service is a critical component of what you do. In many ways, I think the term stewardship goes far beyond this definition, and it means that we have an obligation to determine the future that we want to see for ourselves, and that we have an active responsibility and obligation to ensure that that future comes to fruition. We have to make sure that we see ourselves just as responsible for what the world looks like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, as anyone who is a leader across the globe. It is just as important that us in educational institutions can move forward the power and resources that we have to ensure that that change occurs. And that's what truly makes us stewards of our future as we move forward. So as a result, I think the partnership between educators and students is going to be pivotal in the 21st century. And I see Gen Z as a catalyst to be able to move that forward. So as we go forward, as exams come up next week, and as we determine what the 21st century continues to look like, I just want to go back to the original questions of how will you lead in a complex world, and how will you be a steward of our collective future? Thank you all.
Testing? Okay. Thank you for that, Matthew. Really, it's different, isn't it? For those of us who have been following along the Campus with a Conscience series, Matthew's talk has been very, very thought-provoking in a different way, I would say, right? You've brought us along this journey to think about how we as academics as well should behave, should inculcate in our own students as well. So I thank you for that. It's a good call, a wake-up call one more time, because I just finished class before this session. Okay, so I'm unsure about everyone in the audience today, but I think to me, the biggest takeaway points here are relevance, perspective, and well-being, all at the same time, right? Would you agree with that?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So Matthew, if I could pick your brain a little bit, if I may, I have a few questions. One of it is, what do you think made your application for the Fulbright scholarship different from everyone else? I think I heard a there. I think it's a question that we are all curious about. What do you think set you apart?
It's a very good question. I think public service might have had some to do with it. I think one thing that the Fulbright looks for in particular is one of the things that they told me actually when I had my first interview when I came here to KL is they said, we really don't like to bet on people with the Fulbright. When we bring people here, you need to prove to us that when you come here, you want to not just leave Malaysia in a better place, but yourself, you want to leave as a better person as a result, going back to the US and bringing everything that you've learned to make the US a better place as a result. And so I think that's something that I was really excited for as I was going through the application process, because I came in unknowing and uncertain. I still remember the first day when I got here and I really had no clue what was going on. And I thank the Sunway Centre staff that was replying to emails at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. to make sure that I could get here. But I do really think that it comes down to wanting to do good, but not knowing how to do it, and feeling empowered and motivated to do something, but wanting to learn how to do that from the people there in the first place. And that's what I felt really inspired and compelled to do, because I knew Sunway, I knew the institutions here, I knew the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health, and I knew the incredible work that was happening. And I just really wanted to make sure that I could do anything to be a part of that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think Matthew's experience for the past 6 months is a testament to the wonderful people at Sunway Centre for Planetary Health, right? The way the ladies came in and greeted you as they came in and took their seats, you can see the connection there. And it's wonderful, isn't it? And you emphasized in your talk earlier the personal change you had in your mindset between school and college, right? So what kind of change are you hoping to see in Malaysia, having been here for 6 months now? Sorry, I'm asking a tough one.
No. I want to make sure I think through before I respond, because being in Malaysia has been so impactful for me that I want to make sure I do this justice. I don't think it's a change in Malaysia necessarily. I think I want to see a change in the leadership potential that Malaysia has, particularly from the educational side. I have learned so much about being here and what it means to be a student here, but also a researcher here, that I think needs to be shared with the world and the greater community. I mean, we had the pleasure of having the Planetary Health Summit here in April, and just seeing the impact of what that was able to do here. I have colleagues from around the world who came here in awe of what was able to be done here. And I think it was really a call to a lot of people that while Malaysia is such an incredible place with so many incredible people doing incredible work, how do we make sure that that's amplified in every other country across the world?
Lovely. Thank you for that. I think the academics here will be very pleased to hear that. Actually, speaking of the Planetary Health Summit, the back of house producer was just here. I think he has left. But I mentioned to you earlier, we had a front of house producer, that was me. Back of house producer was Delas, he was up there earlier. But anyway, it's very interesting to hear your relationship with stewardship, academic achievements, policy making, and all that. So I'm hoping to hear from the floor as well. If you don't mind, we'll open the floor for some Q&A. Yeah. Does anyone have any burning questions? Yes, sir. We have a question. Microphone is coming your way.
Knowledge is increasing exponentially at an incredible rate. In 1900, knowledge doubles every 100 years. In 1945, it doubles every 25 years. Now, knowledge doubles every 12 hours. And the thing is, how do you know what is fake news? How do you know what is facts and what is true? And for all those who are learning, this is one thing you can take home with you, as quoted by Alvin Toffler. The illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So how many of us here are learning new things and forsaking those things that doesn't work and embracing the new truth that we want that is applicable? So I think this is the most important mindset of a student. Because if you just hold on to authority, hold on to tradition, hold on to established facts, you will never make any progress. So that is my comment. Okay, if I got time, I'll ask some more questions.
Thank you so much for that, sir. That's really wonderful to be reminded of. It's true. It's about learning, relearning as well, isn't it? And being able to establish the differences.
Could I add something to that? I want to thank you for that, because I think one of the biggest things, greatest things in my transition as a student is, I think, when we're 18, 19, when we're in high school, we think we know everything, right? Like I would have a response to anything that was ever possibly said to me. And then I got to university, where, I wasn't in just a high school of say 100 students or something like that. And I was like, oh, and so the biggest value that I've learned is the ability to accept that I don't know something, and the ability to sit somewhere and just learn and listen from other people. And I think it's been lost a little bit. I really think that we have to ensure, my generation has to ensure that we can just sit and say, I don't know, I want to learn. I want to engage. I want to figure out how to build up my own knowledge base. And I don't think we should ever accept that we have all the knowledge in the world, because like you said, it's doubling in 10 years from now, it'll probably double by the minute. And I think that is so important to keep in mind, that the biggest strength and the biggest humility that we can have is accepting that we don't know.
Absolutely right there. Every first lesson I have every single semester with my students, when we go through our course learning for the next 14 weeks, this is what we're going to go through. But I always remind them, as much as I am here to teach you, I want to learn from you as well. So it is a transactional experience, isn't it? and being able to stay humble and admit that we don't know everything, right? Okay, any other questions from the floor? Or comments even? Yes, please.
Thank you for your very insightful talk. I just want to ask, you presented about the Gen Z characteristics, and then you presented about the responsibilities of educators, right? And then, of course, in the middle is supposed to be the development of this Gen Z into leaders. So the mediating factors have to be, developed slowly, incrementally. And of course, you also highlighted on relevance. So from what you have learned so far, in comparison to the US and other parts of the world, since you are very familiar with different models like the United Nations models and so on and so forth, then what would you suggest we should incorporate into the Malaysian curricula in order to develop this kind of mindset as what this gentleman has mentioned?
Thank you, Prof. Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think one of the things that I've learned being here is how much international dialogue has helped me. So being able to sit with students here in Malaysia, for example, and have conversations, and one, be proved wrong by many of the things that I believed, but also be able to hold fast in some of my own knowledge and some of my own beliefs has actually strengthened my learning capabilities, because it allowed me to build confidence in myself and say, oh, you know, from a US perspective, these are my thoughts, this is what I believe, but then also sit back and question or correct my own ways of thinking as a result. So I think I am now, I think as being a product of it, I am a huge supporter of exchange programs, particularly where students can have conversations. There's a great program in the US actually at Georgetown that does climate, I think it's a climate change dialogue between the US and China. And it'll be American students and Chinese students that actually go through dialogues virtually every month and start to build out a lot of those conversations. So one thing that I've really looked to do is see, okay, how can I take some of my fellow students who, you know, I'm working with, I'm training with, and expose them to dialogues with students from other countries? Because it's one thing to kind of be based in an American institution and meet students who then come to that American institution. It's another thing to be wholly immersed in an outside international institution and meet all of those students as a result. So any ways that curricula can continue to build and develop those dialogues, I think is really, really critical.
Fantastic. Any other comments? Or yes, sir.
What Matthew have just commented was actually, they call it cross-pollination of idea. It give you vibrancy, it give you perspective, it give you depth. And I just want to give you an example of Elon Musk. Elon Musk was 9 years old and he read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. Spent about 16 hours a day, you know. And in his own word, Elon Musk said that I was educated by books and my parents. Now, how did this Elon Musk develop such an intense desire to learn from books? It's because when he was in the womb, this is called prenatal education. The parent reads to him. So he's familiar with vocabulary, he's familiar with words, and therefore the self-learner is the best learner, because if you are not a self-learner, no matter how good a professor is trying to teach you, your mind is blocked, you know. You're not open to think. And they say the human mind is like a parachute. If it's not opening, it's going to crash you and you're going to have a problem, you see. Yeah. So the best preparation for the future is actually, you must learn how to learn.
Yeah.
Then, you know, it's just like Peter Duncan said, those who are high achiever in the 21st century are those who know how to learn and unlearn and relearn, so that you will learn from history and not make the same mistake that history has made, you see. And that's my comment.
I actually,
you, yeah.
if you'll allow me, I have one quick story that I think really it's very.
Please, yeah.
So my, like Lisa very kindly said, my background is on global governance and diplomacy. This is a world filled with jargon, filled with acronyms galore, filled with, you know, and when you learn in a classroom, you learn about, say, all of these international treaties and all of these different things, and you become very adept at spouting out that word jargon without actually giving the background for other people to be able to learn it, and starting off from a place where you can actually build out that knowledge base that you were able to learn in a classroom. And that's something that I think I have learned quite significantly during my time in university. I was head in a book at some points, just learning all of these international laws, all of these different negotiation tactics, these negotiation styles, and everything that was happening from the UN side, the United Nations side. But I never actually learned how to then communicate that to a broader audience. And I think it's really interesting from a political kind of avenue as well, is how do we build bridges via education to ensure literacy on a lot of the problems we face nowadays? How do we ensure that, you know, there isn't a hierarchy of knowledge so that people don't get alienated when you start just shouting out acronyms at them? And I think it's a perfect example of not just de-learning, but relearning, exactly like you said.
And cross-learning, cross-pollination learning as well, and conditioning as well, isn't it? As simple as our ecosystem in Sunway University alone, right? I'm from the School of Arts, and I worked with Centre for Planetary Health. That cross-pollination, the conversations that happened, and the additional outcome that's going to happen later on this year, just from that cross-pollination and so on. It works with interdepartmental scenarios as well. So I think it is something very crucial, isn't it? That wanting to learn and also communicating what we're trying to learn as well, right? All right, we are coming close to the end, but we still have a few more minutes. If anyone else would like to say anything, even if it's not a question, if it's just a comment. Oh, yes, please. Familiar faces I'm excited about. We can take turns, don't worry.
My name is Hamiza, and
Don't be shy.
this silly question, but I just want to ask, as a Gen Z myself, there's a lot of questions and information everywhere. So do you have what can Gen Zs do to focus, especially on climate change and planetary health? There's a lot of information out there. Who do we trust? What do we do? And also Gen Alpha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hamiza. It's a great question, and I think it's something that a lot of Gen Z and the future generations are struggling with right now. I think it's kind of two-sided, because I think like we were talking about before, you should be comfortable saying, you know, I don't know, and figuring out where to gather that information. But there's a certain level of also being confident in your own ability to learn and your own ability to build your own knowledge base. And I think it's pivotal for every one of future generations to be able to sit and be like, you know what, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I don't really know what to believe, but I believe this. And I know I can believe this. And I know this to be true, and trusting yourself on that. So I think that conversation needs to happen. And we're living in a time of significant evolution of information right now as a result. So I think rooting ourselves with people we know and trust as well is quite pivotal, and being confident in our relationships, in our partnerships, and in our different knowledge bases that we can then go to and confide in and say, I don't know. But then they can also come back to you and say, I don't know, but I know you know. And being able to build those trusted partnerships and relationships is going to be absolutely pivotal to fighting this wave of knowledge and information and ensuring that we're continuing to learn in the best way to better ourselves and better our planet.
Thank you for that. And Hamiza, I think to build upon that, you did mention about time and trust and all that. I think that's also to do with our ability or inability now to focus on things, isn't it? Our attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter by, I want to say the minute, but but it is a bit scary, isn't it? Yes, we have another comment up here saying, Joy, if we can pass the mic to our lovely supporter, Madam Tomoko.
While we're passing quickly, just on that note, I'm about to start law school in a few weeks, and I'm worried about that same exact question.
Thank you, Lisa. My first question is, are you real? You know, that was my first thing. Can you touch him? Is he real? Because you say you are Gen Z, right? So we hear so much about characteristic of Gen Zs, you know, we kind of have a mindset about Gen Z. And then you come out and start talking all the things that I wanted to say. I wanted to say to Gen Z. So the thing is that I think you talk about education and communication. Do you have kind of ideas that these, definitely I'm not Gen Z, so my generation, this gentleman's generation and your generation, is there a way that we can actually communicate? I think that is the beginning of learning. So we communicate and we can actually learn from each other, because today I really learned about your generation. There are people like you, actually. I don't know how many friends you have, but you know,
A lot. He's got a lot on this side.
okay. But you know, do you have any ideas? Do you think it's a good idea that we kind of intergeneration communication or learning, collaborating, or whatever you call it, you know, we can learn from each other? Thank you.
I have a solution for her.
Okay.
Please.
I think we're in the same generation, right?
In Malaysia, there's a society called the Philosophical Society of Malaysia. The last time they had a conversation, you know, and one of the lady is 72 years old. She's learning about you know, how to manage you know, they call it geriatric, all those senior people. And she's communicating very well, because most of these people who are in the Philosophical Society of Malaysia, they're all gens, you know, in their 20s, 30s students, you see. And we have a great conversation, you know. And I think they have it about once a month, and then sometimes they meet in a cave, you know. So there is a solution to it, but you must know where to find the answer, you see. Yeah. Now the other Hamida's question is, how do you prepare the next generation? You must start it from the womb. Before the baby is born, you got to start. And this is what happened. I just share with you one incident. In 9th of March 2019, I met this lady called Maslisa Zainuddin. She's a president of the Malaysian Med Society. She's a vice president of the ASEAN Med Society. She's a Google scholar. She's an academic member of Academy of Science in Malaysia. So during tea break, it's a whole day forum, you know, to celebrate outstanding women who have achieved outstanding success in science, research, and maths, and so on, you see. So I asked her this simple question, you see, who is the person most significantly influenced your interest in maths? And she just replied, my mother. I said, how, your mother? Oh, she did a lot of mental calculation while I was in the womb, that's it. You know, in fact, I've been doing this research for the last 20 over years, you know, and I have a book with me, which I can give to you. You can go back and read so that you can start investing in the next generation. And why many young people do not want to have children, you know why? Because they cannot see anything beyond 20 years. If you go and work as a woman, you know, at the end of the month, you get a paycheck, you know, that's your reward, you see. But for you to bring out a generation, a children is 20 years, you know, your investment is 20 years. And this child may turn out to be a rascal, turn out to be a useless guy, you know. And say, why should I take the risk, you know? So everybody plays safe, you see. But in the hand of the child, actually, you got to start with prenatal education. Their health, their beauty, their intelligence, their success in life, their emotional intelligence, all started from the womb.
Your parents did good.
Well, thank you so much. And I actually think there's an interesting component of what you said that answers the question. So firstly, thank you. You're very kind to ask if I'm real, but I really appreciate the question, because the first thing that comes to mind, and bear with me here, is give us a chance. I really think it is so easy to write off Gen Z as a result of what Gen Z is dealing with and the ways that we are responding as a result of this. Like we were talking about, the influx of information. I mean, social media and TikTok and everything that is coming in, there is so much happening in so many different ways that we're absorbing subconsciously, consciously, back and forth. And so as a result, I think we're all trying to figure out how to do that just as much as everyone else is, but we're getting the brunt of it as a result of most of it being directed at us. So one of the most helpful things that I've learned is when I've had mentors or advisors, just let me sit down and rant for 20, 30 minutes and say, this is everything that I'm dealing with. This is everything that I feel, because then conversation can happen as a result a little bit. You get a little bit of kind of the roughness, the kind of edges out of it, and then the real communication can happen. And the second part of that, I think, as well, which is what I was referencing before, we in Gen Z are, I don't want to speak on behalf of the whole generation, but are so insecure right now. Like, we are so stressed, we are so anxious. Those are real things. That those aren't things we're just making up on TikTok. Those are absolutely real. And I know that I get anxiety when I send an email thinking, how are people going to respond to it? How is a mentor going to respond to it? I get anxiety in a classroom if my question might not live up to par of what the teacher is expecting of me. These are real insecurities that we think about every single day, the minute we wake up and the minute we go to bed. And I think it's really important for educators to be cognizant of that and to give us those affirmations that we are here to help you. This is a safe space. We want you to learn. We want to engage with you, because I really believe it'll help us follow in kind.
Thank you. Sir, if I may have your name.
My name is Jordan Tan.
Mr. Jordan Tan, it's been a pleasure having you with us today. And Tomoko, I hope that helped answer your question as well, right? Okay, we're almost at the end. Do we have one last question? We do, don't we? Okay, microphone coming your way.
Thank you. Hi, Matthew. Thanks so much for the brilliant presentation, as always. And just so you know, I think I can safely say on behalf of the whole Sunway Centre for Planetary Health, that it's really been a pleasure to have you, and we're so grateful to have had your presence, your contributions, and have learned so much from you itself. So very happy to hear you speak here. My question kind of relates to what Hamiza said earlier and what you mentioned. With the state of the world now, with geopolitics being so fragmented and climate change, so there's so much anxiety, as you rightfully say, and there's also a lot of powerlessness among youth. So this powerlessness or this fear and anxiety can either translate to apathy or action. And I think in your case, it's pretty easy to say that it's translated into action. But how can education institutions like Sunway University work towards translating all that anxiety into action rather than apathy and help the youth? Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Maisura. And I think it's a really important point. We've discussed this a little bit as well. I would argue there's a bit of a disconnect right now for students in classrooms. I think there's a lot of questioning of why we are learning the things that we are learning, and it doesn't hit us until 5-10 years later. I know there are things that are still not going to hit me from my university degree until 40, 50, however long it might be. There are things that are hitting me from high school every day nowadays. But as a result, I've found myself in classrooms asking, why am I here? Why am I sitting in a classroom learning when there are so many other things happening around the world? What's the importance or significance to me learning trigonometry or history or all these different components when I could be out doing something? And then the inverse can also happen, where I know I can't do anything out there, so I'm going to go in here, do my own thing, do my studies, and just go on with my life. And I think we need to merge those two lanes a little bit. So just maybe a quick aside that helps a little bit from my own perspective. I have been so empowered by my time being at Sunway. You say that it's clear that it's action, but I accredit much of that to the center in particular. And it was proven by the point that I was given the opportunity about a month ago to decide whether I wanted to do full-time or part-time law school when I go back to the US. And I sat with it. I really, really sat with it and was like, what am I going to do? And the reason it was so difficult is because I felt so empowered by being surrounded by an educational institution that was so clearly invested in its students and making sure that that apathy dissolves as a result of the classroom. And it empowered me to say that the way that I am going to continue to feel like I can create action and not become apathetic is to ensure that I can do the work and that my academics then propel me to continue to do that work. And I think that dynamic is really, really important, whether that be through immersive learning experiences in the classrooms where students can actually see and reap the benefits of their potential action in real time. I think that'll motivate students to want to engage in the classroom more. And I think right now, like I know I've struggled. There will be times where I'll put my laptop on and then maybe not pay attention to lectures and stuff like that. I'll fully admit that. But if there are moments where students can sit in a classroom and say, this is my opportunity to do something good. This is my small chance to, even in KL, change one small thing that will have an impact on the broader community. It'll give more validation to the reason they're sitting there in the first place. And I think that's the best way to fight that apathy, is that combination of small incremental action tethered to the academics in the first place, and making sure that what is learned in the classroom doesn't stop at the classroom, not just 10 years from now, but in that moment in the first place. I think if we can really ensure that students feel dedicated to the work by doing the action related to the academic work, those laptop screens will close and phones will go down, and students will feel compelled to learn in a way that we saw even before the pandemic. And I think that we'll see in even broader amounts from before the pandemic. And I'm really, really hopeful for my generation as a result of that.
Thank you for that, Matthew. And I think it's also something to think about, because one of the learning outcomes at Sunway University, the last one actually, is lifelong learning. And I think that is something that we as students and educators here need to hold on to. And relevance of what they study as well is absolutely crucial and necessary. All right. I think that we've come to the end of our session today. I just wanted to ask if you have any advice you want to give a not so bright me. I don't want to offend anyone else here, just me, not so bright. How a non-Fulbright scholar can learn from a Fulbright scholar. What would be your one advice for us?
Well, my quick asterisk advice would be don't get caught up in the name, because I would argue that you are more accomplished and intelligent than I am, just in the capacities of what I've learned about you in the last 5-10 minutes. I think one thing we've seen, even in the last year in particular around the world, is we've dehumanized some of our most critical components of our humanity. And regardless of whether that's from the geopolitical side, from the educational side, it is so important that we see people as human to human before anything else. And I think we need to ensure that no matter who we meet, wherever we meet them, however we meet them, we see them as humans first. And whenever we hear things in the media, wherever we see things happening in the world, we see those people as humans first. And I'm thankful for the fact that we as two humans get to sit here and converse in this way. And I just really think that if we continue to build those tethers to our humanity and bring that back, that will ensure that we move better forward to a better, more prosperous place.
Absolutely agree. I have this policy. I don't know. I think everyone here does too, but I just think that I want to put this out there. I am someone who likes to see people for people. They're just another human being, regardless of what they do for a living. So I hug our cleaners and I wish them good morning and good evening every time I see them, you know, and they feel loved, they feel seen, they feel valued. And I think at the end of the day, that's all we ever want.
Wave to the security staff is actually every time before I leave the center, I think every single Sunway security staff knows me as a result of just saying bye.
Absolutely. I was stopped in Malacca a few months ago. Hi, miss. And I'm looking around. Okay, who was calling? Is it a former student? No, it's our security guard, our auxiliary policeman. And, that means a lot to me. But yeah, at the end of the day, we're all human beings trying to make a difference in this big, bad world. So with that, Matthew, we've come to the end of our session today. It has been great fun. I must say, for Tomoko, who's been here every single session since we were in a webinar, this has been the most dynamic session we've had in terms of conversation, isn't it, Tomoko? It's fantastic. Really nice to hear a different perspective from a different generation, because I am a different generation. Not the same as Tomoko, but I am from a different generation. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for sparing your time off your busy schedules to be with us here today. And I hope we've got something. We've each learned something. And we will wave you goodbye as you leave in 6 weeks' time. Or is it 6 weeks' time, right? 3 weeks' time. And with that, we have a little token of appreciation for you. Apparently, I'm supposed to give it to you today. And given our height difference, it's going to look very funny in the photos. But here we go. So handsome. Everyone's still seated. We could literally go on another hour, but unfortunately this hall is booked for another class in 20 minutes. But yeah, on behalf of the organizing team, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in the next installation of Campus with a Conscience Live. Yay!
You know, I had another question actually. You didn't go to Hollywood?